Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten from IDERA, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Geek Sync titled How to Select the Appropriate Approach to Data Governance. Our speaker today is Bob Seiner, President and Principal of KIK Consulting and publisher of the Data Administration newsletter, here to compare and contrast the three approaches to data governance. At this time, I will turn things over to Bob to get started. Bob, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I guess it all depends on where you are in the world, but I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're staying safe and staying well wherever you are. As Kirsten said, my name is Bob Seiner, and I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with you to talk about how to select the appropriate approach to data governance. So let's get started. So in today's webinar, I'm going to hit on several subjects. First thing I'm going to do, actually, before I jump into the 5 subjects that you see on the screen here, I'm going to give my definition of data governance. I'm going to give my definition of data stewardship. I'm going to give a definition of metadata, because that's really kind of the backbone of an effective data governance program. I'm also going to share with you very quickly a framework that's going to become a critical component of being able to compare and contrast the different approaches to data governance. So once I go through those things real quickly at the beginning of the webinar, I'm going to jump into 3 approaches to implementing a data governance program. So that I typically refer to them as the command and control approach, the traditional approach, and something that I talk a lot about, which is the non-invasive data governance approach. Then what I'll do is I'll walk through the core components that must be addressed in no matter what approach that you take to data governance. I'm going to then share with you a tool, well, actually more of a matrix, to help you to kind of compare and contrast those different core components to the different types or different approaches to data governance that I'm going to talk about today. And then we'll talk about why the selection of the approach is a really critical decision for your organization. And then I'm going to talk about how to select the best approach for your organization. So let's get started, and let me jump real quickly into the definitions that I use. So there's a lot of different definitions for data governance. I like the definition of data governance to have some teeth behind it. I like it to get people to sit up in their chair, sit forward in their chair, ask questions about what do you mean by this definition? You know, I don't want it to be soft and fluffy. Data governance is a serious discipline. And so when I say data governance is the execution and enforcement of authority over the management of data and data related resources, you know, I want people to question that. I want people to know, to ask, well, what do you mean by execution and enforcement of authority? Because the truth is, no matter which of those 3 approaches that I just mentioned that you take, at the end of the day, the goal really needs to be to execute and enforce authority over the data, or people are going to continue to behave the way that they are already behaving, and you're not going to improve the quality, the value, the understanding, the protection of the data. So that's a strong definition of data governance, and it's one that I've been using for several years. Some people push back, but I think it needs to be worded strongly. My definition of data stewardship is that it's the formalization of accountability over the management of data and data related resources. So what I mean by formalization of accountability is that, you know, if anybody in your organization, or perhaps everybody in your organization, has a relationship to the data, so whether they define or produce or use the data, and if they're being held accountable for that relationship, they're a data steward. There's no opting in or opting out of being a data steward. If you're being held formally accountable for what you do with the data, then you are a data steward. And in fact, I've been known to say many times that everybody is a data steward, and that the organizations really need to get past that and understand that to cover the entire organization, everybody is a data steward. My definition of metadata, everybody's heard the definition data about data, but I broke it into a couple pieces here. I said that it's information stored in IT tools that improves both the business and technical understanding of data and data related resources. You'll see each of my definitions end with those same words, but you know, so metadata is data, but it's information, and it needs to be collected somewhere, like in a IDERA software product, or wherever you feel is the most appropriate place for you to store your metadata, but it needs to be stored somewhere. And it used to be thought of as being a technical resource, but more and more these days with data analytics and artificial intelligence and data science, organizations are focusing on metadata as truly being a business resource. And so when I say that metadata is all of these things, it really focuses on the data and any data related resources, like who the stewards are and where are we going to collect information about who those stewards are for our organization, and make that information available to people.